There are some other things that can be asked for. Critical values or critical points mean all values for x that might potentially be relative minima or maxima. This means all values of x where f prime of x is 0 or undefined. We can also ask for relative extremas, particularly all relative extrema. Relative extrema. Means both relative minima and relative maxima. We can be asked for a local minimum, maximum, which is the same as a relative minimum or maximum. And we can be asked for what is the value of the relative minimum or maximum. This means find the y coordinate, which we can do with equations much more easily than we can do with graphs. And on a related note, we can be asked to find the coordinates of the relative minimum or maximum, which means find the x, y coordinate point. These are all asking for about the same thing. It's the same general idea, just different vocabulary that you'll see sometimes. So let's do a couple of practice problems and check for understanding on these. Find the value of the local minimum of f of x equals x to the 4th over 4 minus x cubed. So a couple of translation things. Value, that means y coordinate or y value. Of the local, this means relative minimum. So, as always, we're going to start off. We want f of x. We want a relative minimum, so that's the increasing, decreasing line. We're doing an equation, so this has to be plus minus. This translates to f prime of x. We want to fill in f prime of x, so we need to have f prime. So we take the derivative of this. This is 4x to the third over 4 minus 3x squared. That cancels out. We can factor out an x squared. Do our zeros. Fill those in. Okay, a number less than 0, this is squared, I don't care. Negative 1 minus 3 is going to be negative, so this is negative. A number between 0 and 3, this is squared, I don't care. 1 minus 3 is still negative, so that's also negative. And a number bigger than 3, this is squared, don't care. 4 minus 3, that would also be positive. So, there's our sign chart for f prime of x. Now we can translate this. Negative is decreasing, negative is decreasing, positive is increasing. And now we got this nice little minimum right here. However, this is where it's really important to read the question. We don't want the relative minimum value, relative minimum x value. We want the relative minimum y value. So let's go remind ourselves. Find the y value. That's easy enough. We just want to find f of 3. That's all it's asking for. Remember, we're doing the f of the relative minimum value of f of x, so we're working with this. Just plug 3 in right here. We've got 81/4 minus 27. Want to get a common denominator. And there we go. We found our value. Okay, for problem number 4, find the critical values of f of x equals x squared plus 1 over x. Remember, critical values mean f prime of x equals 0 or undefined. So we actually don't even need our little translation charts here. This is the one time we don't need translation charts. So we just need to find where f prime equals 0 undefined. So first we need f prime. This is definitely going to be the quotient rule, derivative of x squared plus 1 times x minus x squared plus 1, derivative of x, all over the denominator squared. Derivative of x squared plus 1 is 2x. Derivative of x is 1. So we have 2x squared minus x squared minus 1 all over x squared. So that's x squared minus 1 over x squared. Now we need to figure out where this is going to either equal 0, so the numerator equals 0, so x squared minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides. Take plus or minus the square root of both sides. You could also have done this by factoring. That works just as well. F prime of x equals undefined if the denominator is 0. So the critical values are x equals 1, x equals -1, and 0. Okay, for our final problem, let's make it a check for understanding. So, if f of x equals x times e to the x, find the coordinates of the relative minimum of f of x. Notice coordinates, we want x and y. Go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own, and then come back and I'll show you the answer. Key thing here, again, this is x comma y. Okay, relative minimum of f of x. Minimum is increasing, decreasing. We are using equations, so that means we've got a plus minus line, and the translation is f prime. So we're going to be working with f prime, so that means we need an f prime equation. So start with f of x equals x times e to the x. Okay, take the derivative. Product rule, derivative of x times e to the x plus x times the derivative of e to the x. Derivative of x is 1. Derivative of e to the x is e to the x. Now remember, for sign charts, first we factor if we can. Okay, now we can find zeros. That never happens. Okay, so up here, -1, that's the only value that's interesting. So we're going to pick a number less than -1. This is always positive, so it doesn't matter. Number less than -1, let's say -2. 1 minus 2 is negative, so this is negative overall. A number bigger than -1, let's call it 0. This first factor is always positive, doesn't matter. 1 plus 0 would be positive, so positive overall. So translating that over here, that means we have a relative minimum at x equals -1. However, we want the coordinates. So x equals -1 at relative minimum. What's f of -1? Well, we can just plug it in right there. E, just leave e as e, but a negative exponent means it goes in the denominator, so we have -1 over e. So that means the coordinates of the relative minimum are -1, comma, -1 over e.